Welcome back to Tactical Pontoon. I have today a little bit of a trigger tip, a trigger idea. I want to say, starting off, this is not something that I recommend that you do, especially if you are new to triggers. However, I am going to share with you something. Okay? This is an idea. This is something I have done in the past. The reason I'm bringing this up is I have seen people building or making triggers, and they've seen something online where they're trying to get rid of travel in their trigger, and so they'll drill and put a pin limiting the travel. You can see this one. This is an old trigger housing that I personally did a long time ago. I've seen this idea. Obviously, I've done this idea. I don't recommend this idea because once you do this, you're set to that limit. Okay, it's one way to do it. If you're for sure that you have drilled it in the right place, go for it. But once you've drilled that hole and you've put that pin in there, that pin is it's there. However, what I'm going to show you is an idea, a way to adjust your travel without drilling a set screw, without drilling a pin, and it is adjustable. However, the thing about it is, while it is adjustable, you do need to be careful. There are a variety of reasons why I personally do not recommend that you do this, and that you do not mess with the pre-travel on a trigger. There are a lot of variables that go into the safety of a Glock trigger. If you take up too much pre-travel, there are three safeties built in. One of them is a shelf that trigger bar rides on to keep the trigger from basically falling, if you will, the trigger bar from falling and dropping the cruciform, which then allows the striker to go forward. There is a ledge here. If you take away too much travel, that will fall off. That will allow the trigger to fall off of this safety ledge. The other safety and thing that needs to be considered is on the trigger shoe itself. There is this little safety dingus, this little safety tab. If you take up too much travel, that safety tab will ride in the frame and no longer be an active safety. So if you take up too much travel, you will then risk those failing. So you have to, and that's why drilling this pin in this little guy, if you make a mistake and you drill that pin in the wrong place, yes, you might still have room on the safety ledge, but your little safety tab will be riding in your frame. Okay? And then you've bypassed one of the safeties. How can you make something that is adjustable relatively easy? I'm going to show you. If you look, this applies for generation 1 through 4. Generation 5, this does not apply to. Okay, because they changed the design of the trigger bar. So, let me reiterate. Generation 1 through 4. If you look down inside of here, you'll see the top of the cruciform, and there's a spring hook. Okay? Now, what you can do, if you are careful, is this spring hook right here, this guy, it can come forward enough to contact the front of this housing. Okay? Now, if you get what I'm saying, you can take, and these are a trusty pair of pliers that I have been, some cheap Duralast AutoZone pliers. I've been using them for years. They don't get used near as much nowadays as they did in the past, but you can see some tape and whatnot. These have been used for years, since Tactical Pontoon started, for a variety of different things. You can take that spring hook and you can gently bend it forward gently, because you can break this off. If you break this off, obviously you need a new trigger bar. If you gently bend this forward, that, and like I said, you're going to need to test this and play with it. If you, for some reason, decide to do this, again, not something I recommend. It's just an idea. That trigger hook can bump against the wall of this trigger block housing. Okay, so with that in mind, and this is as far as I'm going to show you, you can then adjust the travel by adjusting that spring hook against the front of this trigger housing. You're going to need to put it into a frame multiple different times in order to verify its operation and its safety. But in that way, you are adjustable. Just don't be a gorilla while you're bending that hook. All right? You get the idea? This is a relatively simple idea. Again, if you do this too much, you will bypass these two safeties, as well as, and this is just a trigger bar I pulled off the shelf. It's probably a return. This one's highly scalloped here on the vertical extension. If you also take up too much pre-travel, you will need to address the vertical extension on your slide, or where it interfaces with the safety plunger in your slide, because that is the third Glock safety. If you take up too much pre-travel, you then start to activate the safety plunger. So again, this is why, for the most part, I do not recommend that somebody without technical knowledge mess with removing pre-travel. But if you get this idea and you want to remove as much pre-travel as possible, this is an idea. Some triggers have more room between this safety tab and the frame that you can take up, so that you can basically tune it to the frame. Okay? So this little tab, if it sticks away from your frame, say 1/4 of an inch, that means you have about 1/4 of an inch to play with, as long as you don't mess with the activation here or or sitting on the ledge of your trigger block housing. Okay? This is a brief general overview. Again, not that I recommend it, but it's an idea. It is adjustable. The other thing that is going to do is it is going to give you more tension on the trigger spring. Okay? The more you bend this hook away from this side of the trigger block housing, there will be more tension, which means the trigger break or pull will be less by a little bit. It's not a huge amount, but that is something that you have to take into consideration with the rest of your system. So it will actually lighten the pull just a little bit. All right? That is a tactical pontoon idea. Not really a tip, but an idea. If you want an entire system, if you want something that's been tuned, get with me. I can get you taken care of. I have systems with very limited and no pre-travel. I've taken all of this stuff into account already, and no, that's not how I do it. I have adjustable features built into the trigger block housing. I have extended safety drop ledges, and I have modified trigger safeties so that everything fits in the frame that it was intended for. But this is an idea. If you want to take the guesswork out of it, Tactical Pontoon is where you go. All right? When it comes to Glock triggers, there's no one better. That's just the way it is. Also, Tactical Pontoon has the best stickers in the game. Enough said. On that note, I will catch you next time on Tactical Pontoon. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe. There will be more ideas and tips and tuning tricks coming. I will catch you next time on Tactical Pontoon.